car in the shop, and guess what? It's not a Nova. Customer brought in this 72 Corvette. It's the base V8, so it's a 354 barrel, but it's not the hot one. It's not an LT1. Not even sure if they still had the LT1 available in 72, but reportedly has 47,000 original miles. Now the owner's complaint is that he smells oil smoke. He says it smokes a lot when it first fires up. When he brought it in, I didn't see any smoke. And he said that's normal. It clears up quite a bit as he drives it. So, about the time I commented that I didn't smell any oil smoke is when he told me that it clears up when it warms up. But I had no sooner than said that when he told me, no sooner than he said that it clears up a bit when it gets warm, is when I started smelling oil smoke. So it's not normal to smell burning oil from an engine. That indicates a problem somewhere. So I'm going to be diagnosing it tomorrow. It's pretty late tonight, but I thought I'd go ahead and get a preliminary video done here. Now, don't mind the parts. I bought a lot off of Marketplace and got a lot of them for sale. They're in my way for now, but got room for the Corvette. Barely. So, a couple things I wanted to show you. If I can get this hood. There we go. So, I'd like to point out one thing. Hopefully I can get this flashlight on. There we go. Those two numbers match. That gives me a sigh of relief that it's not a different engine. It's the original engine to the car, as long as the actual VIN plate doesn't argue about it. Factory AC car. Engine compartment's really clean. The engine's almost too clean. It's like it's been, I don't see any sign of overspray, orange overspray. Exhaust manifolds had that cast iron paint. That's all stuff you'd want to do with the engine out of the car in order for it to look this clean afterwards. So the engine has been pulled and freshened up a bit, at least cosmetically. So that might be a clue that'll lead me to figuring out what's wrong with this oil consumption. And he says, the owner says, that it doesn't actually consume oil. I wouldn't normally be concerned about checking the oil with such a low mileage engine, except the main complaint is oil smoke. Come on, Corvette, where did you hide your dipstick at? I might have to come back to that some other time when I have both hands. But I'm curious to see if it's down even a little bit. There, right under my nose. Vacuum booster hit it. Without wiping it off first, it says full. Kind of dark. Don't see water in it, but I have no reason to believe it's got any kind of a coolant leak, so it's full, and he says he never has to add oil So maybe it's not a big oil burner, but it's a nuisance issue. It's a nice car. The guy wants it fixed. So I'll be using a bore scope in all the cylinders. I'll be doing a compression test on all the cylinders, all the preliminary stuff to check all the easy stuff first. It says one cylinder has an oil fouled plug whenever he pulls the plugs in this engine. So I'll figure out which cylinder that is, and maybe we'll just have to focus on that cylinder. But really cool car. I think he said this is Ontario orange. Again, this is the base 350, but I'm sure it's got over 200 horsepower, and in a car this light, it should really scoot. I might want to try to find a date code on his Eagle STs. I don't know how long ago they stopped making those. I love the deep dish rally wheels too. 72 last year for the chrome bumper. Good paint job. Got to figure out why it's smoking. So I'll hang up for now, and tomorrow when I get back out here, we'll start doing some diagnosis. Fun stuff. Hang in there. So I pulled the number one plug. Looks pretty normal. We're going to get a bore scope in there and check all these cylinders. That's number one. Then I'm going to do a compression test. I'm going to do each cylinder individually, both tests, just to save time pulling spark plugs. So bore scope is next. This is the number 8 plug out of this 72 Corvette. Doesn't look too bad here, but then you rotate it this direction, and you see ash and soot. This is the second one that had some abnormal discoloration on it. The other one wasn't this bad. I didn't even write it down which cylinder it was. I was just going to overlook it. But this one is bad enough. This could be the cylinder that's causing the problems. The owner says when it starts from a cold start, it smokes. So if there's oil entering the cylinder when it's cold, and then that problem goes away when it warms up, the oil that's on it would be burned off and turned to ash. So it wouldn't be wet. If I fired it up right now, if I put this plug back and fired it up right now and shut it down immediately, this plug might be wet because the oil would be fresh. The oil leak would be occurring during the warm-up period. So we have to figure that out. Might leave this plug out for a minute. I mean, even after I do the scope and the compression test. We'll see. Okay, so my bore scope app for my phone isn't supported fully by my phone. The scope works great as a scope, but as far as recording video of what you're looking at, apparently it's a fairly new app. They need to update it so that I can actually record videos on my phone. But as far as being able to use it as a bore scope and look at what I'm doing, it's a good tool to use even without the video function. As you can see, you've got these little diagonal lines on the cylinder wall. You're looking at the cylinder wall of this Corvette, number 1 cylinder. That's called cross hatching. It's left over from the machining process from the final hone. This car is supposed to have 47,000 miles, original miles, and that looks like a very, very good cylinder wall. It's very likely 47,000 miles. If not, if the engine has been pulled and rebuilt, then maybe those are, I mean, that looks very fresh to me. Worst case scenario, the engine was rebuilt and bored and rehoned, or maybe just rehoned and new rings. So from this, we can't really tell yet why we're burning oil. But the cylinder wall looks like they should, maybe even a little better than they should for such a low mileage vehicle. This is number one. We'll do the rest of the cylinders and update you along the way as to what I'm finding. Here I am again using my GoPro to show you the display on my phone. Here's number 3 cylinder. Again, good cross hatching. You can see the top of the piston down there at the bottom. Camera's angled a little bit inside there. It's not nice and flat like it was in the earlier picture. But so far, still looking good. All right, here we go with the compression test of number 3 cylinder. I tested number 1, it was 120. This one looked to be a hair over. I'll look at it closer when I play the video back. So far, if they're all around the 120 range, we're good. 8.5 compression ratio. Things are still looking good. A little better video. I can reach the compression tester with my selfie stick, more or less. So we're going to try to crank it over. Maybe you'll see a little better what compression we have. I'd call that about 122. So far they've all been 119 to 122 range. Very, very good. Okay, other side of the car. We've got this big Frigidaire unit in the way. But fortunately, I can reach under it and I can feel the spark plug for the number 2 and number 4 plugs. 6 and 8 shouldn't be an issue. But even though these are hard to see, I can reach under the compressor and I'm pretty sure I can get a socket on the spark plugs. I'm familiar enough with these old small block Chevys, I'd rather be able to feel it than see it. It's better to be able to feel it and not see it than to be able to see it and not feel it, in my experience. So I'm going to take a short break and get back to it. Now here it looks like we're down to about 110 psi. I have to turn the gauge towards the camera. We're on the passenger side now, so I won't be able to see the gauge this time, but I had it turned facing me when I was over there at the starter switch, and it looks like it's about 110. I'm going to get video, and then when I play it back I'll be able to verify, but it looked quite a bit lower than 120. So in that clip, you could see this old Delco shock was leaky. Both of them were that way, and then there was the stabilizer bar bushing. The bracket was loose. They used a flimsy washer. Over here's the washer. So that washer just deformed as it was tightened, as the bolt got tightened down, and just got sucked into that slot that the bolt runs through, and it just didn't do its job. So we're going to go to the hardware store and find some good flange bolts, maybe even an oversized flange bolt, maybe drill and tap a bigger hole. But the owner complained of the car not being stable and feeling really loose. And I know that if you don't have a functional stabilizer bar, you got to have two good links and a set of bushings on the frame with good tightly bolted down brackets in order for the stabilizer bar to do anything. And he didn't have that. He had worn out shocks that probably just bounced all over the road. This logo dates back to the 80s, maybe the early 90s at the latest. So it's time for him to get new shock absorbers. So tomorrow we'll be doing some front end work. I'll go to Napa and get him a good set of KYB shocks. And then it'll be road ready again. I'll talk more about what's going on with the engine pretty soon. We're actually looking at carburetor issues. I've solved some of those problems by using temporary measures, and got it to stop smoking, got it to idle better, got the fast idle to come down. That was a complaint he had with the way the engine ran. Smoky, rough idle, and fast idle. So I was able to solve all three of those problems by kind of band-aiding a few different systems so that they would work the way they're supposed to. The idle stop solenoid here does not work, so this carburetor needs some work, and I have expressed my opinion with the various problems on this carburetor and the history that he explained about this carburetor. It's been plagued with nothing but problems since he had this carburetor rebuilt. Actually, he took that carburetor in to get rebuilt. That's the original carb base. It has the original number on it, the serial number. But this one actually ended up being rebuilt and used. And there's just such a history of problems with this particular carburetor. I can rebuild a carburetor that's all there, but this one we don't think is all here. We know there's probably missing at least one spring, and I can't figure out where it goes. The diagrams that I've found online don't seem to list anything that's not already here. So rather than try to chase down what a previous mechanic reported that he removed, that's all we know, we think it's the fast idle. Something in the fast idle has a spring removed. But instead of chasing that down and the other issues it has, I've recommended buying a good rebuilt carburetor from a shop in Indianapolis. I've had good luck with them whenever I had a carburetor that was not all there or worn out. When a carburetor needs more than just a carb kit to rebuild it, I call those guys. And I think that's going to be the best option on this carb. It'll get a good clean, it'll get cleaned really good, and it'll get a good dichromate finish reapplied to it, so it'll look like a brand new carb and it'll function like a brand new carb. And then I think he'll be back on the road, because I didn't discover anything out of the ordinary inside this engine. Compression test came out good. All 8 cylinders within 10%. I said 20% before. Don't know what I was thinking. Recommended is 10%, no more than 10% between the lowest and highest cylinders. And the bore scopes showed pretty normal cylinders, low mileage cylinders with a lot of cross hatching. So I think the remanufactured carb right out of the box, just bolted on, that's going to be the way to go. And it's going to alleviate all of the problems he originally brought the car in here with. Diagnosing them took a little bit. I eventually narrowed it down. Everything he was complaining about was carb related. He thought he had umbrella seals on the valves that were bad, and that he just had he had all kinds of worries about things that were not so. So I've traced all of his complaints to the carburetor. So I'm confident that a good bolt-on 3-man carburetor will solve all those issues. So tomorrow I'll go to Napa, get those new shocks, bring them back here and get them installed. Fix that. I'm actually going to re-bolt both of those stabilizer bar bushing brackets. The other one was still tight, but I'm not going to give it a chance to do the same thing this passenger side did. So I'll get those 4 pieces fixed up and installed, bushing brackets and the shocks, and then take it for a test drive. And I'm thinking I'll be happy, and I'm sure he's going to be happy. Isn't that a great color? All right, I'll bring you back along with me tomorrow once I start putting new parts on it. Okay, so I'm going to install the stabilizer bar bushing brackets now, reinstall them. This is what was on the car. It's a flange bolt, but they had to use a washer because the holes in these look like aftermarket brackets. As you can see, there's a lot of side-to-side play there. That's what the split washer was for, but it kind of deformed under the pressure, under the clamping force of the bolt, and I have the video I showed you earlier where it was, the bolts had backed out and it loosened up. So I'm going to switch to these 3/8 inch bolts, and you can see a lot less of that side-to-side play. It's really obvious both together. So I have to tap the holes, drill and tap for the larger bolt, and the flange will, the flange being bigger because the overall size of the bolt is bigger, will actually distribute the clamping force of that bolt a lot more evenly, and they won't back out again. Okay, so the tapping process was a little longer than I expected. There's actually weld nuts up inside there. I'm familiar with Novas and Camaros and the like. This frame's a little thinner, so they put a weld nut on the back side to allow you to tighten the bolt enough without pulling through that thin sheet metal the frame's made out of. So I had to drill and tap the entire bolt, and it was a long, boring process, and I didn't feel like anybody would want to watch all of that, so I just left that out of the video. But I did oversize the holes for these bolts. So now, the bolt should thread right in. With little effort. Threading in a little better than I expected. Maybe I'll get my air ratchet on the next one, just to save my wrist a little bit. This one's not too bad. This one's requiring a little bit of effort. Now we have got good contact with the head of the bolt, this flange bolt, and the bracket. And that's not going anywhere. So for reference, if I can remember how to disconnect my camera from my, there it is. So I don't know if it'll be evident on video, but that's a 9/16 bolt head. That's the older 1/2 inch that was already in the car. So I'll do this to the other side. Stabilizer bar repair will be done. Alright, so we're going to test drive the Corvette with the new front end components put on it. The stabilizer bar brackets are bolted in securely now, and the shocks are both new. All new hardware on all that. Man, this thing is tight. Haven't been inside one of these since I weighed 175 pounds. I thought they were going to have to use the jaws of life to get me in it. Just ran into town real quick. He doesn't have a passenger side rear view mirror. Decent power steering. Take the brake off. Save a little gas. Touchy. It's got a long nose on it. Any other car, I would go ahead and whip it on around. The owner complained of having to give it too much steering wheel input to get it to do what he wants on the road. Don't know if I'm feeling that already or not. Feels pretty good to me. I'll not go too fast on the country road here. I don't know how easy this thing bottoms out. Seems pretty responsive to me. Big bump. Not too bad. Good stiff suspension to keep the frame up off of the road. It actually handles this road better than my Nova does. I've got the rear shocks in stock. I haven't installed them yet. I can feel the rear end is not as stiff as the front end, shock absorber wise. The front end really bounces back from the bumps. Rear end's kind of mushy. The owner estimates the horsepower at about 200. He says it's the base model 350. But Corvette's a light car, the fiberglass body and everything. 2-seater, short wheelbase. So 200 horsepower is more than enough to make this thing feel scary if you really want to get into it. But we're not testing performance, we're testing the integrity of the front suspension after the repairs I made. Wouldn't say repairs, I'd say basic maintenance. Definitely needed the new shocks. Did all right on the country road at low speeds. Get it out on the highway, see what it does at 55. Here's 55, it just feels like I'm shooting along like a rocket. I think it feels pretty normal to me. Looking forward to the owner giving it a test drive and telling me how much of an improvement I made. Said something about the hubs. I'll look at them first if he says it's still sloppy. But I mean, it doesn't feel like a new car today's new cars. But I don't remember. It's got the old Saginaw steering box. I wouldn't expect it to handle like a new car, but I'd say it handles like a new Corvette did in 1972. And my camera's coming loose. I don't have the sticker for the glass yet. Let me see if I can rig this back up. Recognize that sound? That's right, duct tape. in case I decide to edit all that out with the loose camera problem. Feels like you're going really fast at 55 if this speedometer is accurate. But as far as the steering goes, I think it feels like what one would expect from a brand new Corvette in 1972. Pretty sure it's got the old Saginaw steering box in it. Little play in the wheel. Maybe this is what he was talking about. Maybe we can fix that. But once you get to the end of the play, it's right now. It's responding. Hanging in there, GoPro. Yeah, the steering wheel itself has some play. But I think I'm done working on the front suspension. Might have to address the steering box or a pitman arm or something like that. We'll let the owner test drive it first. I'll be changing the rear shock absorbers today when I get back. It'll be ready for the owner's assessment. That's a cool looking hood and fender setup. Kind of wish I had another camera looking out the windshield. That left a cloud of smoke. He's definitely got carburetor issues. Or like you said, another mechanic rebuilt this carburetor. Maybe this carburetor is just shot. And the rebuild kit just didn't do anything. I'm thinking we need a professionally machined and remanufactured. Not just rebuilt, remanufactured. Quadrajet carburetor. So this will conclude the joyride for today. I heard a groan in the front end I didn't like. I'll be looking at that too. So, rear shocks are next. So the new carburetor is doing its thing. Smoking is gone. It was a little lean, so I had to open the idle jet screws a little more. That seemed to take care of that. No more smoke at all. So I just did the lean condition and it seems to be happy now. I noticed that there was an intake valve that didn't close completely when I plugged the air line into one of the cylinders. Can't remember which. I think it was over here on the driver's side. I'm thinking carbon on the intake valve. So I am going to try running this directly down through the carburetor. This stuff works great in the gas tank, but I want to get it directly to the intake valve right now. This stuff's known to clean deposits when used on a regular basis. I'm going to try it on an irregular basis. So I had a different ending plan for this video, but sometimes when you're working on cars, things happen, and a lot of the stuff I said in the ending wasn't true. I did valve seals on this 350. That should take care of the oil smoke when it's cold. But so one of the problems I had when I'm adjusting the valves right now. I just now noticed that timing mark isn't perfect, but it's good enough to adjust the valves with. For a while I was chasing my tail. That timing mark didn't seem to line up with where the camshaft should be. So I kept readjusting the valves and trying to get the timing mark to line up and make sense. But what I learned is you can't trust the previous mechanic. So what I found is, there's the timing mark. I verified with my borescope that number 1 is at top dead center, and both these valves are closed. As you can see, the valves that should be open are open. So that tells me that it is in the correct position to adjust these valves. But what threw me off with number 1 in at top dead center on the power stroke, we got our distributor rotor pointing towards number 2 over in that direction instead of over here where it should be. Well, how can the distributor be firing the number 2 cylinder? Actually, this would be the number 8 spark plug wire. But how could that be? How could it fire number 8? And my timing light, I used the timing light to adjust the timing on this car before, and that timing mark worked perfectly. How can that be if the distributor is trying to fire number 8 when cylinder 1 is at top dead center? Well, that's easy enough to find out. I've had too much faith in the previous guy. So there we are with the distributor cap installed. So here is pretty much where the pointer is pointing. That plug wire, instead of going over to number 8 this way, comes over here to the passenger side, the driver's side of the engine, and goes in this loom. So they've got the number. They took the forethought to put the number 1 plug wire on the number 8 spot on the distributor so that it would time. And judging by that incorrectly timed distributor, I ended up chasing my tail, and I was on a wild goose chase trying to figure out why things didn't line up. Never trust the previous mechanic. I'm going to leave it like that for now. The customer may want me to pull that distributor and turn it the right way. But for now, I'm adjusting the valves and everything's working, everything lines up now. I just relied on someone else's work, and it cost me a lot of extra time. So the Corvette's finished. All the complaints the customer have been resolved. The valve seal replacement fixed the oil consumption. The remanufactured carburetor fixed the rich condition. The suspension work. Developed an alternator problem. The customer came by and test drove it the other day, and when he brought it back, it was making a weird growling noise. So I grabbed my stethoscope and diagnosed it right away. It was the alternator where the noise was coming from. So I ordered a remanufactured AC Delco unit. That solved that problem too. So he'll be coming by today to pick it up, and hopefully we'll be moving on to a new project soon. Thanks for watching.